listener production.
Hi, Sasha Barbagat with you. Welcome to The Briefing. A 19-year-old Australian woman has died and another remains in a critical condition in hospital after consuming drinks in Laos suspected of containing methanol.
We've received the very sad confirmation from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade that tragically Bianca Jones has lost her life. Our first thoughts in this moment are with her family and friends who are grieving a terrible and cruel loss. This is every parent's very worst fear and a nightmare that no one should have to endure.
Tragically, Bianca Jones is now the fifth person over the past week to die as a result of suspected methanol poisoning in Laos. It's left many people asking, how could this happen? In the second half of this episode, we explore how and why methanol is getting into people's drinks overseas, what it does to the body, and what you can do to reduce your risk abroad. That coming up after the headlines with Helen Smith. It's Friday, November 22.
Morning, Sasha. Morning, everyone. Sticking with the tragic story out of Laos, it's been confirmed a fifth person has died due to suspected methanol poisoning. British lawyer Simone White, who was 28 years old, has been named overnight by UK authorities. It comes after Australian woman Bianca Jones passed away yesterday, her family making the tragic decision to switch off her life support. Her friend, 19-year-old Holly Bowles, remains on life support in a Thai hospital. Dozens of others are still in hospital after allegedly consuming the suspected tainted alcohol while staying at a popular backpacking town.
Authorities in Laos are investigating the incident and they've spoken to the Nana Backpackers Hostel and its workers, where a lot of these people were staying, demanding to see the spirits the women were served. The hostel's manager has told the Associated Press the two Australians were among more than 100 guests who received free shots of vodka from the bar before they went out for the night. The hostel claims no other guests reported health issues. However, we know that many of the victims did become ill after staying at the Nana Backpackers Hostel. It's not known, though, where the contaminated drinks were sold. We know they went out afterwards after drinking at this bar at the hostel. The manager has said that they hope the investigation clears their name and they have stopped giving out free shots for now.
The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, along with Hamas official Mohammed Deif. The warrants are for alleged crimes against humanity and war crimes committed during the Israel-Gaza war. The ICC had initially sought the warrants in May, and Israel has swiftly rejected the position as anti-Semitic, labelling the charges as false and absurd.
The court claims it has reasonable grounds to believe Israel's president and his former defence minister bear responsibility for starvation as a method of warfare, as well as murder, persecution and other inhumane acts, while Deif is believed to be responsible for the crimes against humanity of murder, extermination, torture and rape and other forms of sexual violence. That's according to the ICC. So I guess the next question is, does this mean we're going to see international cops knocking on Israel's door to arrest Netanyahu and Gallant? No, it only puts the pair at risk if they travel abroad to any of the 124 member states of the ICC. Now, they are obliged to arrest international criminals if they travel to their country. It doesn't mean they do, but they are obliged to. The US is not a member and has also condemned the warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant. And it's worth noting there have been unconfirmed reports that Deif may have been killed by an Israeli airstrike. Benjamin Netanyahu is the first leader of a Western-style democracy to have an arrest warrant issued in his name by the ICC. And Vladimir Putin is the only other global leader to have an active ICC warrant against him. So it is a big step.
Over 1,500 workers from Woolworths warehouses across New South Wales and Victoria have walked off the job indefinitely, demanding better pay and safety conditions, threatening the supply of groceries in the lead up to Christmas. The strike began on Thursday morning, with more workers set to join the industrial action today, with the United Workers Union saying they had been negotiating with Woolies for over 6 months before workers voted to walk off the job last week.
Yeah, so what is the union asking for? The big one is that workers want the productivity framework scrapped. So that requires warehouse staff to achieve a 100% performance target when picking items at speed, which is known as their pick rate. Now, a spokesperson for Primary Connect, which is the supply chain business owned by Woolworths, says that workers had been offered several competitive pay offers, and they added the strikes are unlikely to impact the supply of groceries to Woolies customers and supermarkets. However, the union seems to think that that's not exactly the case. So this story was kind of chugging around last week, and Woolies was very quick to come out and say, there is going to be absolutely no impact on customers. We're not going to notice this. But this is a huge chunk of staff that work in the warehouses, which is how all the groceries get out to us. So, we've represented both positions. One says it's going to impact us. The other one says no. We'll wait and see what happens.
Yeah, look, my brother used to work at one of these big supermarkets, and I will never forget that one year for Christmas, their Christmas bonus, you could say, was a branded water bottle. And I think that year they made billions in profits, as they generally always do. So, look, I'm always kind of rooting for the little guy here. The workers there. I'll be really interested to see what happens from these strikes. And it sounds like it's straight out of a movie. An Aussie TV personality has helped wrangle a snake off a plane in WA.
I have had it with these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking plane.
Virgin flight VA1482 was set for takeoff yesterday morning, Australian Western Standard Time, from Broome, when a stowaway python was discovered on board. Passengers were about to be disembarked when Disney presenter Andre Rerakura stepped up to wrangle what turned out to be a harmless Stimson's python so the flight could get underway.
There's never a dull moment in aviation, but that certainly takes the cake. Everyone, we do have a gentleman on board that found the snake and has safely taken it off the aircraft. We'll finalise our details here and get our cabin ready for departure. I don't really know what else to say. Thanks, everyone.
Rerakura appears on a show called Shipwreck Hunters Australia. That's how he is this Disney TV presenter. He says the python just happened to slither by his foot when he grabbed it.
Ended up coming right underneath the guy next to me, so I jumped down between his legs and just sort of grabbed it and nestled it. It looked pretty scared and, yeah, it was super cute and just wanted to make sure it was safe. That
audio thanks to Nine there. And look, the flight in the end was only delayed by a couple of minutes. So Rerakura is this huge hero by all accounts, and they showed video of we heard a little bit of the flight attendant there thanking him, but the passengers all clapped when he walked back on board after taking this snake off this flight. And it's, I want to say, these pythons are quite small. So don't think of like a huge boa constrictor or like a red belly black where they're really long and scary and going, this was just like a cute little guy. Stimson's pythons. He was right. They're really, really cute snakes.
Cute to some, Sash.
My question is what happened to it afterwards. I haven't been able to find what they did with the snake, but I would assume that they called snake rescuers and they would have come and then taken him somewhere, or he or she somewhere safe. But Broome International Airport CEO said they're not sure how the reptile came to be on board, which would be my question. How did the snake get on this plane? But yeah, look, a fun little story to wrap up our Friday headlines. But our deep dive today, we are switching pace. We are going to be speaking about methanol poisoning, but there are a lot of things you can do to protect yourself when you're abroad. So we're going to talk about that.
Hi, Bension here. The tragic death of 19-year-old Bianca Jones has sent shockwaves around the country. Family of the Melbourne teenager yesterday confirmed she had died in a hospital in Thailand. At the time of recording, Bianca Jones is the fourth known person to die, and at least 10 people have fallen ill after reportedly consuming drinks in Laos, apparently laced with methanol. In a statement, Bianca's family said that she'd been surrounded by love, and we are comforted by the knowledge that her incredible spirit touched so many lives during her time with us. We want to express our deepest gratitude for the overwhelming support, love and prayers we've received from across Australia, they said. Bianca and her friend Holly Bowles, also 19, were on holiday together. Holly remains in a critical condition in a Thai hospital. The Australian government has issued a warning through the Smart Traveller website urging people to be alert to the risks, particularly with spirit-based drinks like cocktails. So if you're planning on travelling anytime soon, or you know someone who's overseas right now, what do you need to know about methanol poisoning? And what can you do if you suspect it's happening to you? David Ranson is an adjunct clinical professor at the Department of Forensic Medicine at Monash University. Thanks for joining us, David. So we've learnt about the tragic death of Bianca Jones, 2 Danish women and an American citizen in a significant methanol poisoning event. What do we know so far about the others affected?
I understand that people have become seriously unwell and several people are in hospital and receiving, fairly intensive care. These are not completely rare events. In fact, methanol poisoning is surprisingly common. I looked at the Médecins Sans Frontières website just the other day, and last month I think there was an outbreak in India where I think 65 people died and a lot of other people were affected and injured. And this is really the sort of pattern that happens in the methanol poisoning issue. You've got 2 main things that are going on. One is people deliberately drinking methanol, either as some sort of a self-harm attempt or as an accidental issue. And there have been examples of people, drinking hand sanitizers and, things like that have been used in the past. But the other big one is the adulteration of alcohol. That is adulteration of commercial drinks, or people buying cheap alcohol that's really sort of bootleg, homemade sort of stuff, which will often have methanol in. A lot of countries where people brewing their own drinks, perhaps for village events or something like that, they can get badly contaminated with methanol and then people can be seriously harmed. There's a commercial element, I suppose, to this. If you buy legitimate drinks and then you want to make them go longer, so you add a bit of more methanol to them, well, you're selling more drinks and you're making more money, and methanol's really an industrial cleaning agent, so it's really cheap compared to having to ferment drinks properly and safely.
We should say that in these specific instances, it's unclear at this stage what exactly happened. But could you take us through the basics? What is methanol? How is it different from the alcohol we would regularly drink? And what makes it so dangerous?
Yeah, look, and most of the common alcohol things we drink are ethanol. Ethanol certainly makes you intoxicated and you can be pretty unwell if you drink too much, but it breaks down gradually in the body to safe products that get eliminated from the body, and we not usually have too many long-term effects from a particular drinking incident. You certainly get sick and unwell and so on in that acute intoxication period. Methanol, interestingly enough, will do similar things in that acute intoxication period. But what happens then is that methanol is actually broken down in the body with an enzyme, alcohol dehydrogenases. And these break methanol down, but instead of breaking it down to relatively safe chemicals, which ethanol does, it breaks it down into really nasty chemicals, formaldehyde, the sort of embalming fluid, and then onto formic acid. And this is really nasty stuff. It acts as a cellular poison. It affects the ability of cells to make energy, and so the cells die. You become acidotic. You become seriously affected because of organ failure. A lot of people have visual disturbances or go blind, in fact. And there's obviously ongoing brain damage possibilities as well. So what you need to do is to stop the alcohol dehydrogenase from breaking down methanol. And one of the ways you can do that, there's a drug you can use that just blocks the enzyme from being able to get access to methanol. And the other one is, in fact, ethanol. So if you actually give a person low doses of ethanol, it preferentially works with the alcohol dehydrogenase and leaves the methanol alone while it's working with ethanol. And hopefully in that period of time, you will effectively lose the methanol from the body through your urine, through breathing it out, and things like that, before it's had a chance to be converted into these nasty poisons.
How easy or difficult is it to tell if methanol is in your drink?
Well, I think it's extremely difficult. Methanol, like ethanol, is it's clear, odorless, tasteless. So there's no real way of working out that it's there. There have been some talks about research projects looking at developing quick tests for methanol. I'm not sure where those are at this stage. I think there was some work in Norway in this area, but I've certainly not seen, commercial products or things being sold that people could individually use. Certainly, it would be useful in a medical setting, obviously, to have more diagnostic tools to help you work out whether, in fact, you're dealing with methanol poisoning or not.
What are the initial symptoms of methanol poisoning, and how can you distinguish those from just getting drunk?
Well, look, in the early stages, the methanol and ethanol work in a very similar way. It is a central nervous system depressant. It will give you all those sort of standard hangover things, feeling nausea, a bit of vomiting and so on. And, of course, many people are having a mixture of ethanol and methanol, of course, in their exposure. And the difference comes is that, as you get over the ethanol effects, with the methanol, as the ethanol disappears from the body, the methanol starts to get broken down by this enzyme, and then you start getting formic acid being produced. And then you start getting things like chest pain, abdominal pain, and indeed it can progress to coma. You get visual disturbances, a whole variety of really quite nasty issues can happen to a person.
And what is the treatment for methanol poisoning? You mentioned earlier that ethanol, as in regular alcohol, can have some kind of diminishing effect of the poisoning. I'm assuming that people aren't just given alcohol as the treatment.
If you have alcohols, as say, in a form of ethanol, which is contaminated also with methanol, then your methanol poisoning symptoms may occur a little later on in the process because you're getting a certain degree of initial protection from the ethanol. But the reality is you can't rely on that to keep you safe.
Sure.
The only way you can really manage a person in this situation, and there are a drug you can use which is better than giving someone ethanol in a way because it doesn't have the ethanol complications, but it's got to be done in a controlled way because it's not just those particular agents that you're going to use to block, competitively inhibit and block the enzyme. You need to check other things because if there is some poisoning, the chances are the person's got is becoming acidotic, their blood's becoming more acid-like, and you need to manage that. There's a whole variety of important intensive care treatments that are required in order to manage this. So no, you can't just drink alcohol the few days and think that's going to be the answer. It's got to be done in a proper controlled environment. In fact, because of the sort of widespread worldwide issue about methanol poisoning, and in particularly in certain undeveloped countries where these sorts of, the control of production of alcohol at a commercial level isn't so great, there are regular outbreaks in that sense because, a collection of adulterated drinks becomes available. And as a result of that, there's an outbreak. Now, Médecins Sans Frontières has done a lot of work in this. They've got training programs out there for doctors in those countries so that they can become aware and look at all the different ways in which you treat people. I mean, you've still got to make a diagnosis. You've still got to work to a proper scientific regime when you're treating these people.
Other than Laos, have we seen this in other countries?
Sure. As I said, it happens around the world, particularly in countries in the Asia-Pacific region, but we've also seen it in a range of other countries, often due to different circumstances. But certainly there's been reported cases in Cambodia, Indonesia, Thailand, India, and across different parts of the world where there might be another reason for there being a poisoning outbreak.
The government, through the Smart Traveller website, warns that as little as one shot of methanol can actually be fatal. Overall, best advice, what should people do to keep themselves safe while they're travelling?
Yeah, look, it's actually really difficult. And you're absolutely right. The dose required of methanol can be quite small. So we can be talking about, 10 to 20 mils of fluid, although most of the poisonings, in fact, probably involve a little bit more than that. Being safe in this environment is tricky. I mean, clearly, if you go to sort of backstreet bars or you're buying alcohol or somebody in a stall in the street, these are risky areas simply because there's an uncontrolled issue around the supply of that drink. And the more you've got less certainty about the reliability of the source of the alcohol, the greater the risk is that you might be being sold or might be purchasing a drink that's actually contaminated with methanol. Buying alcohol from reputable places, buying alcohol from places where these are, commercially well-known brands and things like that is getting a bit safer. But the reality is that, anybody can adulterate any drink and top it up or make it go further by adding methanol to it. So, it's really hard to know how you can be absolutely safe.
What about sealed bottles? Is that a good strategy?
Sure. I mean, and that's been talked about. I think one of the good websites to look at here is the Red Frog website, which is the organisation that helps in the schoolies and the leavers and people travelling and so on. It's got some good advice on that, and they talk about, people seeing a bottle being opened for the first time and to make a cocktail or whatever. And obviously, the less tampering there is, the greater the chances it'll be a legitimate source. However, how easy it to be sure of that? And the reality in the average cocktail bar must be, well, I'm sure that you're not going to have the first drink out of every bottle. So, I don't see how we can ever be 100% sure in that situation.
Well, let's hope that people stay safe. David, thanks so much for joining us on The Briefing.
Thanks very much.
Forensic pathologist David Ranson there. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Briefing. That's it for now. We'll be back in your feed with another episode this afternoon from 3 p.m. I'm Bension Siebert. Catch you next time.
Listener.